There have been certain transcendent moments in the last 15 years in Ohio State history where that team shows up. Because I think that if you look back to the beginning of the Urban Meyer era, there was a fundamental shift in who Ohio State was. Ohio State's always been a great program, but it became an elite one in the sense of the players that it had. And every year since 2013, they've had the types of players on their team that they have now. But for whatever reason, over the course of the past decade plus, they have rarely reached their ceiling. And if you actually go back and you look at the history books, I think you could actually make the case that the 4 or 5 best teams in program history, or at least in the modern era, were the ones who did not win the national title. Like the 2019 team, the 2015 team. They've had a lot of great teams that just fell short. And it's always
and
the
2014 was a year early. Like,
right.
That was
right.
a surprise. They were very talented, and obviously we learned throughout that season how much talent they had. But that was sort of like 98 Tennessee when they thought, okay, 99 is going to be the year, but they just put it all together a year early.
Yeah, and if you look at the teams that have either won it, like the 2014 team that broke through and lost to Virginia Tech earlier in the year, or the or teams that got close to winning it, like the one from 2 years ago when they lost to Michigan and almost beat Georgia, and now this one, it always seems to be the flawed ones, the not great ones that break through and get on the doorstep. So, I think that's part of just the nature of winning a national title, of how hard it is to actually do. And sometimes you just need the breaks to get there, right? And sometimes great teams don't have the breaks. So I don't know, like we can't go forward into the show just saying Ohio State's going to win it. But with the way that they're playing and the players that they have, it just kind of seems like they are on the way to me. So, we'll see how it goes. They're playing Texas in the state of Texas next week, and Texas is a very talented team. I think that they're flawed too and have some issues. But if Ohio State plays the way that they played against Oregon, they're not only going to win the rest of their games, they're going to win the rest of their games by double digits.
So we brought this up on the show last night in the instant reaction show. And I said, I'm not going to say they needed to lose to Michigan, because they didn't need to lose to Michigan. But obviously you are the accumulation of your experiences throughout a season. And that certainly woke them up in terms of how you prepare, how you game plan, how you call plays. Somebody asked Ryan Day that last night, and you got video of Ryan Day answering that question. And it's a
you want to know why?
Yeah.
Let me tell you, because when he asked the question, I was cringing in the back of my head, because if Ryan would have said, yeah, it was the best thing that could have happened to us, like he would have gotten scorched. It's like, I knew someone was going to ask him. It's like, that's the Ohio State way. Like, oh,
it's the low hanging fruit.
Yeah. Something happened that was bad. It must be amazing. Like that's it. And it's like, sometimes just bad things happen. But if you're 0-4 in your last 4 against your rival, you got to be careful how you answer that question. And, so the second he goes, everybody was upset about the Michigan game. What do you, I don't know. I was waiting for what he said, but go ahead and play the clip and we can discuss how he answered it and how he should have answered it.
Yeah. I mean, it's hard for me to say something like that. But I know that, you're a sum of your experiences. And this team has had great wins this season. It's had some tough losses. And, we have learned from those. And you got to grow, and you got to build, and you got to make sure you're, focusing on your strengths and making sure that, you understand what your weaknesses are. And I think that's a big part of it. But ultimately, it comes down to our guys. And I just keep going back to that because these guys are resilient, and we're at a place where you can hear a lot of noise, but they didn't do that. And I'm very, very proud of our staff. I'm very, very proud of our players, but we're far from done.
Next question.
I think he answered it really well.
Yeah, he did it perfectly. I can't sit there because there's no such thing as the best thing happening to you is losing to Michigan, because losing to Michigan also will continue to be a black mark on your resume, even if you get it done. So like, I think people will look back at the national title with love and, celebration and, all the things that fans feel when they win one. But I also think too, like, the second that they talk to a Michigan fan and they go, "We beat you that year," it's like, it's not as pure, Andy, as it. And maybe like I see you rolling your eyes. I don't know.
The Ohio State fans aren't worried about how pure it is right now. Because we got some Ohio State fans in the chat who are new. I think are new to the show, and I am so happy for them because they were down bad for almost a month, and now they are on top of the world. Now, the fact that we've seen this team lose 2 games should keep them from getting too cocky, because obviously you have to come every week prepared. But we dumped a lot on them when they lost to Michigan. And you know what? If they win the national title, they're going to be insufferable, and that's okay. Like, I give you carte blanche, Ohio State fans, to be as insufferable as you want, because we piled on you about as high as we can pile on anybody after that.
The reality of the new system is, whether we like it or not, is that to a certain extent, it de-emphasizes regular season results. Now, it doesn't mean that they don't matter, but it doesn't carry the same weight that it used to. And I think part of the reason why this rivalry game has become what it is, and the obsession of it is what it is, and this isn't unique to Ohio State, Michigan, it's, Alabama, Auburn too, but this conference for so many years was decided by who won this game at the end, right? All the way back to the Big 2, Little 10 time. And you win this game because this was the original playoff game. And I think the reason why it's so hateful and so passionate is because it wasn't just about beating the team that's a few hours north, as they would put it. It's about making the Rose Bowl or making the playoff or the Big Ten championship or whatever area you want to go. And I do wonder that, like, now that it has no impact on your ability, if you have a good year, to reach your goals, if quickly or eventually over time, the passion for the game is going to dwindle, because like the essence of winning the game is the essence of like winning the year, and it's
you
like, if
can't
Ohio
just
State
let people be happy. You gotta have a bigger picture. Like, this is going to ruin this, or this is like, so Michigan beating Ohio State is going to ruin Ohio State's national title if they win it this year. But if it doesn't ruin Ohio State's national title if they win it this year, then it's going to ruin the Ohio State Michigan game in future years. Just let people be happy, Ari. Just let them enjoy
should
this.
Be happy. I'm not trying to make people not be happy. This is the greatest thing in the world if you're an Ohio State fan. I'm not saying that they shouldn't be happy, but this is a big picture show, and we're not only talking to Ohio State fans, we're talking to everybody. And I think that, like, part of the reason why, I preferred the smaller field is because it kept the integrity of those games what they were, and it frankly isn't anymore. So the good news is that teams like Ohio State and maybe even Penn State, depending on, the year, are going to have, there's 8 teams in the playoff that have an opportunity to do something that they wouldn't have been able to do for the first time. Like, if Ohio State wins the national championship, this is the first time in history that a team that did what it did on the field in the regular season can go on to win it. So that is the feature of this system. And watching Ohio State avenge a loss against Oregon the way that they did should be gratifying. I'm not saying that at all. So
can I ask you a potentially oversimplified question?
Sure.
Let me introduce you to Axia Time. I'm wearing my Odysseus 2 watch right now, which is a thing of beauty. This is the official watch of the College Football Playoff and the Heisman Trophy. Best kept secret in college football. These Axia watches are Swiss made. This is an automatic self-winding. It is beautiful. And every time I wear it, people are like, "Where did you get that? How do I get one?" And the same kind of craftsmanship that you get from something that costs 3 or 5 or 10 times as much. AxiaTime.com. They've got a limited edition series for all of the teams in the college football playoff. So you want to celebrate Ohio State's run. You want to celebrate Arizona State's run. Arizona State didn't beat Texas, but by God, you want to celebrate that season. I guarantee it. A beautiful watch with the Arizona State logo in the face would be a great way to do that. So axiatime.com, check them out. By the way, if you've got an organization that they do custom watches, they have some beautiful pieces that they've made for teams that have won championships, and they've made custom watches for those teams. So here's the Arizona State one. If you're watching on the screen right now, absolutely gorgeous. Go to axiatime.com, check them out. I'm telling you right now, this is one of my favorite things that I have come across in the last couple of years. I love my watch, and every time I wear it, people are like, where'd you get that? So axiatime.com, official timepiece of the college football playoff and the Heisman Trophy. Their defense has been playing really well all along. Like the Ohio State's defense has been good all year.
Yes.
So that's not
the answer.
Like,
is yes.
They've improved some. They were very, they were sacking the quarterback like crazy yesterday, but they have not changed very much. Ohio State's offense is what has changed. Is it just as simple as somebody figured out maybe just give the ball to the best player on the field more times?
Do you think if Ohio State drew up an offensive game plan that involved throwing the ball to Jeremiah Smith on every play, they'd win?
Not on every play. I think defenses would probably be onto that. But if they targeted him, say 33% of the time, which is a lot for a receiver, I don't think anybody could beat them.
Yeah. Well, yeah. Like we talked about this going into the game and after the game, but Ohio State did throw the ball more in the Michigan game than they had in both, I believe, the Tennessee and Oregon games from a statistical standpoint. But they didn't take shots downfield in the Michigan game, right? So I think that part of this too is how you throw it and when you throw it. And I think that Ohio State has found itself in that it is a throw first team. It knows who they are, and they are going to lean into it. And when they lean into it, guess what happens as a result of it? Basic fundamental football. Defenses soften. The defensive front isn't as aggressive against the run. And then all of a sudden you've got Quinshon Judkins and Trey Henderson, which is why, Andy, by the way, when you watch Ohio State play, not just the last two games, but when they're playing at high capacity, even in the first Oregon game, Trey Henderson and Quinshon Judkins break off big runs because they're really talented running backs that are super fast. And when a defense is even off a second, they take it all the way. So, I think that Ohio State has been very balanced offensively all year, Andy. I
don't think it's just the downfield shots though. Like, look at the first touchdown to Jeremiah.
Yep. Go ahead.
Yeah, look at the first touchdown for Jeremiah Smith yesterday. That's not a downfield shot. That's getting the ball to Jeremiah Smith in space with a fairly high confidence throw for Will Howard. That's not a high degree of difficulty, and letting Jeremiah Smith cook. It actually reminds me. I know it's funny that all Ohio State conversations come back to Urban Meyer, even when he wasn't coaching Ohio State. Like, I covered the 2006 Florida team, and Percy Harvin was clearly the best player on the field in every game. And Urban Meyer and Dan Mullen got kind of frustrated because they couldn't always get him the ball the way they wanted to in the flow of the offense. So they just changed the offense to make it where they got him the ball more times, whether it was in the flow of their normal offense or they just dialed something up, like, we're just going to hand it to him, or we're going to give it to him. He's going to come in motion and we're going to give it to him. Like, it feels like now they're starting to realize if we put the ball in Jeremiah Smith's hands, no matter where we do it, good things are going to happen for us.
And Andy, that was a run play, even though it's a pass play, right? Like those short intermediate throws that happen quickly are run plays. They're more advanced run plays, but tossing the ball to him 5 yards is a handoff, but it's just designed in a way that allows one of your best, most dynamic players to get ahead of steam and make something happen, because that's what they did. And it was perfectly blocked too. It was the perfect play call. And I think that Ohio State's plan in general, though, is to do that moving forward. And the thing that was so maddening or hard to grasp is that there were times in Ohio State's season where they lost sight of that for some reason. And I think now that they have found themselves and are playing with a lot of confidence, and Jeremiah Smith too, frankly, is a freshman and is getting better every week. Like, it's not like he was a finished product in week 3. Like, he is a much better player now than he was a month ago and 2 months ago, because it's his first season ever playing. It's absurd what he's doing out there. And like I covered, like I say all the time, Ohio State for 10 years. There isn't a single player, I think, that played their position better than Jeremiah Smith already plays his. Like, and I'm talking about Ezekiel Elliott and Joey Bosa and Nick Bosa, and the list goes on. Like, this is the best. You can make the case he's the best overall player in Ohio State history already. And he hasn't had the accomplishments yet because he hasn't had enough time. But
Archie Griffin won 2 Heisman trophies.
Okay, I know.
You are such a prisoner of the moment. But no, I think
no. I'm not saying he's the most accomplished player in Ohio State history. I'm saying he is the best player physically that they've ever had in terms of where
maybe
he is.
Orlando Pace would like a word.
Well, Orlando Pace is pretty good. Yeah. So anyway, someone asked me here in the chat, and I think it's important that we get into this on the show. We did talk about it a little bit. Did you change your stance about Ryan Day? And I don't know. Did you feel like that I had a really hard stance, like anti-Ryan Day? Because I don't know that I did.
I feel like you were translating Ohio State people to a world of non-Ohio State people. Like, you were translating their feelings to people who aren't Ohio State fans, who probably root for teams that don't have the year-to-year success that Ohio State has, that don't understand necessarily why the Ohio State fan base felt the way it felt. I don't think you were, like, I didn't even feel like it was your opinion. I felt like you were sort of explaining the prevailing opinion to the rest of the world.
Here's my stance. And I wrote about this multiple times. I never was at the point where I was like, Ohio State should fire Ryan Day, but I was at the point where I thought it was rational to question whether he should. Like, sometimes we get into fire this guy or should he be fired, whatever discussions, and it's like, shut up. Okay. But after they lost to Michigan the way that they did for the 4th straight time, I was like, okay, it's time to start talking about this. And I don't know, like, we came into the postseason and I think everybody was generally on board. Like, when great things happen like this, you forget it, talk about prisoner of the moment. We forget where we were a month ago. Like, try to transport yourself back to
and that's why I'm not just handing them a national title, because I haven't forgotten what happened a month ago. Like, they're about to play a really good Texas team. If they get past it, they'll play another really good team. So I haven't forgotten it.
And I don't know. Here's the real question. Like, my opinion of Ryan Day is this. And you know what? I think I told you this. I don't remember if it was on the podcast or when we were just talking, but did I tell you about the Brian Hartline pizza analogy that I gave to him to his face?
Yes, you talked about it on the show last night.
I'm just going to say it again for people who haven't seen that yet. But Brian Hartline asked me in an honest moment, what do you think of the Ohio State football program in the recent years? And I said, you have the best, let's make a pizza. You have the best ingredients, the crust, the best sauce, the best, flour, cheese, toppings, all that. And you also have other pizza places in the same general competition area, like Alabama and Georgia, who have the same great ingredients. And for whatever reason, Ohio State, despite having every possible resource imaginable to be great, has routinely made a pizza that's not as good. And I don't know why. And like, when it gets to Ryan Day, I really do believe it is super simple. Ohio State fans are very educated, as are SEC fans, right? Teams that have fan bases that are constantly who's coming in, who's coming out, who do they hire as the defensive line coach? Like, fan bases are engaged with the day-to-day minutia of programs throughout the offseason. That's why we have a show 4 times a week, right? Ohio State fans are educated enough to know how this team is built with the players that they have on it. Like, Ohio State fans knew that Jeremiah Smith that we saw in the Rose Bowl existed 4 months ago. Like, this isn't a revelation. Like, the world might be catching up, but Ohio State fans know. You watched
Ohio State fans knew when he was playing for Chaminade Madonna in South Florida. Yeah.
So if you really want to understand why people get so mad, Andy, it's because with the way that this team is constructed, and the educated fans that know it, they are absolutely maddened by why it takes so long for them to even reach 80% of the capacity that we saw against Oregon, right? Like even when they played Oregon the first time, and I know it's a different circumstance, but I thought that Ohio State played great in that game and just lost. And then you watch this one, and it's like their defense. We talk about Jeremiah Smith so much, like they have the best defense in college football by a mile. Like they are awesome. I don't know if you watch them like closely, but they were hitting harder than they've been hitting. And it's like, I think all Ohio State fans want is a good game plan, which they have not gotten on a week-to-week basis. And I think that's the fundamentally most rational thing to expect from a week-to-week thing. Like you might not win every game, but you want your coach to have a plan that puts you in a position to win the game. And that hasn't always been true for Ohio State, not just this year, but past years. And then at the same time, not understanding why Ohio State can't squeeze 70% of what they saw out of that team from a week-to-week basis is what drives people crazy. I think that people respect that Ryan Day is a good coach and can build a team that's capable of playing the way. I don't think there's a single team that played as well as Ohio State did yesterday all year in terms of like, wow, that's the megastar or the Death Star that we talk about. Like that is it right there. And I think that's the base frustration. It's not that Ohio State has personnel issues or that they did a bad job recruiting a position or 4 positions or they're just a bad team this year. I think people get mad because they're so freaking good and they don't play well all the time, especially in big high leverage moments. And I think that's a rational thing. And Doug Lesmerises says this all the time, but it's true. When we criticize coaches, it's not like I'm just being an asshole. I'm just throwing it at them for no reason. Like they earned that criticism. So like, if you're like here in the chat right now going, oh, you're an idiot for criticizing and questioning his ability. It's like, what was I supposed to do in that moment? Did you want me to applaud him and say he's the best thing ever? They just laid one of the largest eggs in program history a month ago. So what they're doing now is great, sure, but we're not going to erase where we were a month ago because they're playing well. If anything, I'm wondering
the person saying that to you
even more.
The person saying that to you said the same stuff you did, but with more cuss words. But they don't want to remember that they said that.
And, no, so. And it's okay. And it's okay. Like, I just don't know in the world, not just in sports or Ohio State football. It's like when presented with more information, you're allowed to change your viewpoint.
Oh,
and you're
that's
allowed
not how the internet works. Sorry. You get one opinion and you have to keep
What do you think of Ryan Day now? I don't know. What do you think of him now? Like, it's a completely different scenario. They just played their best game in his entire tenure a month after playing their worst game in program history. So do you want to average them together? Which one do you want to lean on? Like, I don't know. The one thing I am curious from your perspective is if they were to lose to Texas in a 34-31 type game, like a great classic playoff semifinal.
Both teams play great, high level, everything. Yeah.
Does the Tennessee win and the Oregon win? Is he out of the woods? Like, is he done? And like,
okay.
The reason why I bring this up is because after the game is over, I don't know if you read the column I wrote yet. But
I did. It was beautiful.
Thank you.
Golf cart moment with the misses.
I saw it. Okay. And I don't know if River put the picture in here, but I walked out of the press conference behind Ryan yesterday just to see, like, because I knew the golf cart was there and all that. And like his wife was waiting for him on the back of one of the golf carts to transport him back to the Ohio State locker room. And his wife, I saw him sit down and he sat down like this and he looked up into the sky and I saw his body, deep breath. And then he looked over to the left and smiled. And it was the first time I had seen him smile. Maybe he did on the stage. I wasn't down on the field after the game. I was with you, but we'll
have to ask Will Howard, who they also wouldn't let.
Yeah, it was the first time I saw him smile after being around him for 30 minutes. And like, I'm not a very good photographer, but that's him and his wife didn't say anything to him and just put her head on his shoulder. Okay.
Yeah.
And the thing that I was thinking about while this was happening was, could you imagine the relief that those two people are feeling in that moment? Like, I don't even know. I feel like with what those two have gone through, the whole family has gone through. Like, I hope that they were able to squeeze some joy out of that because it was like, I cannot imagine what it's been like to be him this past month, especially because he's a normal, rational, good dude, who has been through the ringer. And
yeah, it's the column I wrote in September. Like, he's not a psychopath like most of these coaches are. Like, this is a pretty normal guy. And now he is a football coach, so I imagine the relief probably lasted about 30 seconds before
he's like, now, tomorrow, today, they're on to Texas. But just like that 1 minute sliver of that day with your wife laying on your shoulder after something like that, like, I was like, good for him, because it's like he has been in a pretty tough spot. And I'm not even saying he shouldn't have been, because I think he earned that tough spot. But, Ohio State is in a really, really good position.